The Titanic, unsinkable. That's actually a marketing myth. Topical though, as this episode will focus on sales. Well, just about everyone knows about the Titanic, the unsinkable ship that hit an iceberg on its maiden voyage. With state-of-the-art safety features such as watertight compartments and remotely activated watertight doors, one can see how a reputation for being unsinkable was projected onto the ship. It was mid-April 1912 that the Titanic, en route from Southampton to New York, struck an iceberg and became one of the deadliest peacetime sinkings of a single ship. Regular listeners of the Skadi podcast will be aware that 5 more lives were claimed by the Titanic when Stockton Rush, OceanGate's chief executive, took the Titan submarine with passengers down to view the Titanic's wreckage. In June 2023, the Titan imploded and the world watched. The accident was preventable. OceanGate's safety practices later found to be critically flawed. If you aren't familiar with that story, catch episode 52 of the Skadi podcast. It's a good listen. Tricky things, icebergs. They say 90% of their volume lies underwater. As a trader, familiar with trading in eighths, that's roughly 7/8. Above the waterline, breathtakingly beautiful. Below the waterline, magnificent but deadly, as Captain Edward John Smith was to discover. Ever the captain, he chose to go down with the ship. The cruise line's chairman, J. Bruce Ismay, survived, in a lifeboat. So, what does the sinking of the Titanic have to do with AI and sales? We heard in the last episode about the threat of AI sycophancy. Put simply, AI bots have a tendency to be agreeable and supportive to the user. This is due to engagement, and engagement drives revenues, for tech companies anyway. In machine learning, there is a phenomenon known as reinforced learning from human feedback, RLHF. It's been found that users often give positive feedback to responses they find more agreeable. Consequently, users engage more with agreeable bots. The result is that in a market vying for users' attention, this AI trait has emerged. And in my view, it has the potential to be just as damaging as the iceberg that took down the Titanic. You see, it's the validation that's the problem, the affirmations, the reassurance that the user is heading down the right path. It's also the problem that Sycophantic AI can choose which truths to serve up to the user, overplaying the positives, downplaying, or just outright suppressing the negatives. Well, that's an age-old risky place for sales. If one looks back at the mis-selling scandals of the past 30 years, a large proportion of them resulted from people doing the sales overplaying the benefits of products while glossing over the risks. Take precipice bonds. My word, icebergs, precipices, anyone would think I have an obsession with geomorphology. Precipice bonds is a name given to a class of bonds that devastated UK savers at the turn of the millennium. Savers were dazzled with offers of high guaranteed incomes. The precipice element, which was rather glossed over, was that to create the guaranteed income, savers risked their capital over the life of the bond. Indeed, that old villain, double downside, often came into play. Let me illustrate how double downside plays out. You may have a product where below a certain trigger, for every 1% fall in the reference index, the capital returned to savers would be reduced by 2%, or double. There were horror stories of pensioners desperate for an income in their retirement, finding their savings virtually wiped out, particularly when markets took deep dives as the dot-com bubble burst. As I read it now, I can see how I would be dazzled by a phrase like guaranteed income. For the independent financial advisors selling these products, they were high commission products. The press at the time is littered with analyses of IFA's company filings, showing how when these bonds arrived, particular IFA's earnings were transformed. It isn't only with savings products that features can be glossed over or hidden from customers. 3 days ago, MPs in the UK were debating whether there should be a judge-led inquiry into the Financial Conduct Authority's handling of how small medium enterprises were sold complex derivative products alongside loans around the time of the global financial crisis. It's been alleged that these derivative products carried undisclosed liabilities that affected firms' credit positions and their financial stability. Surely not another case of structurers using double downside to create mystically wonderful lending products. Indeed, as interest rates fell in the aftermath of the crisis, many firms didn't benefit from reduced rates, finding that they were in products which triggered punitive rates when the market for interest rates fell below reference triggers. Worse still, products were booked against customers concealing significant undisclosed credit line liabilities. Unbeknownst to customers, their credit scores were being damaged, and with that their ability to source future lending. Ultimately, some of these businesses were pushed into distress and found themselves transferred into bank restructuring units. If you're listening to this and think that mis-selling is behind us, we have the controls to prevent repeats of these incidences, you only have to look back at the split cap mis-selling debacle to see that only a short while after the Precipice Bond scandal, savers were again facing losses from a very similar product. Here again, risks to savers' capital were glossed over. So why am I worried? First of all, it's the risk of AI information asymmetry. Second, it's the propensity of AI to go after a goal. I realize I'm using language that credits what is essentially a set of operations, complex ones at that, with human traits. But as we slim down sales and distribution teams and give them powerful AI tools to cover more ground, we overlook that we risk embedding into those teams the very traits we've worked so hard to root out. This is something that management of institutional sales should think carefully about in the case of the lending scandal described earlier, and for desks using intermediaries or distributing products via private banking arms, think about for savings products, and indeed some specialized lending products too. The incentivization is an interesting proposition. With AI in the background, you don't need to have a distribution team whose compensation is linked to selling. Indeed, institutions who have worked to reduce that link due to regulatory pressure may overlook that with AI, it is baked into their business. I certainly can see a future where goal-driven AI assesses which products are most lucrative for the selling institution, and also which products have the least transparency, and encourage cross-product teams to focus efforts on those products. Listeners to the Skadi podcast will recall episode 57 on Vestia, where the board was unable to assess or even see the compensation paid to intermediaries in the products they were sold. The fees were embedded in the quoted spread. I can also see goal-driven AI steering distribution teams towards products in the unregulated space to avoid regulatory hamstringing. One can also realize that steering sales towards product clusters in this way can bring about another age-old repetitive problem: concentration risk. One of the key controls mis-selling introduced following a series of scandals is firms checking that sales materials are fair, accurate, and not misleading. I guess we'll be reaching for AI to check that too. As the rush to bring AI into your businesses goes on, senior managers need to ask themselves, for the 1/8 benefits, what might be in the 7/8 below the waterline. Falling under the senior managers regime, you might find yourself asking, am I ready to go down with the ship? Even as your own bosses, who took the decision to impose AI on your business, waved to you from the safety of a lifeboat, just as the chairman of the White Star Line did all those years ago off the coast of Newfoundland. You've been listening to the Skadi podcast. Till next time.